So, man, yeah, jump in and break down the Chicago Pro everybody's been talking about.
Yeah. Let's break down the Chicago Pro. So I'm sure it's what everyone's been wanting to see. So let's start with a 212. Let's start with a something that surprised you and something that impressed you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I would say the surprise of the show, I'd have to say, would be just how ultimately competitive we found the top three to be. I think a lot of people thought that Keon Pearson would walk right into the show with all of his God-given ability. And I think we all assumed that his conditioning was going to be able to take a jump into the next level, and that leave a trail of pretty good competitors in his wake. But that was far, far from the case. I think Kareth Bonjo made a very, very convincing argument to take the show outright. I think Ahmad El Sidani also made a very, very convincing argument to take the show outright. And then you've got a very, very seasoned quality competitor like John Jewett coming in the fourth place slot when, you flip the coin. John Jewett's good enough to win any pro show any day of the week, in previous years. So I think the big storyline is just the incredible level of depth that we're now seeing in the 212. And I think we've got a great 212 Olympia shaping up here.
Yes, I can't even fathom how crazy the Olympia is going to be. Definitely, I don't want to get into too much, but I really think that there's going to be a serious changing of the guard. Maybe not in the first place, you never know, but definitely in that top five. Like, I feel like we're coming into the era that classic physique is in right now, where you could have somebody in third place and then the next year they're in ninth.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of possibility for that.
Yeah, I think we've got an incredible amount of depth. And I think some of our hallmark names in this 212 class are going to be landing in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th spots. And it's going to be hard to explain until you look at the names in the 1 through 6. The 212 best place it's probably ever been, which is saying something since it's absent of competitors such as Flex Lewis, Jose Raymond. That list goes on and on. But wow, I'm very excited for the 212 Olympia. I can't say for a little while, but
yeah. Well, hopefully we're there, but hopefully we can figure that out sooner than later. So kind of the whole Keon thing. Everyone kind of had him wrote off as he was just going to walk in there, mop the floor. I mean, even we said, what did you say? From the front double, game over. From the lat spread, game over. And I feel like that's true. There was definitely some room that was given up in a lot of those shots.
Yeah. And, I think what we ultimately saw with Keon is he was able to put on such a tremendous amount of muscle from year 1 to year 2 as a 212 competitor that unfortunately I think the buzzsaw that he ran into is simply father time, right? Not father time, if you will, but just time, in that it takes a couple of years to really season and marinate that new muscle and allow it to be able to get that crispy quality condition and that density that I think we were all starving to see from him. I think if, let's say, Keon had stayed in the 212 and he had taken the same degree and amount of muscle tissue from 1 year into the next, I think we could have expected an improvement in the overall conditioning. But I think because he brought in so much brand new, fresh, young tissue, I don't think we're going to be able to see it any more conditioned than what he brought it this weekend to the Chicago Pro. So I think we do have to give Keon the benefit of the doubt that, all factors weighing in, thinking about the kind of skin texture he has, the kind of shape and genetics that he has. I think it's just going to be a couple more years until Keon's able to really dial it in the way that everybody wants. Is he ever going to look like John Jewett on stage? No. That's just not the code. I mean, was Jay Cutler ever as dry and shredded as John Jewett? No. It's just not the way some guys are put together, and that's just not in some guys' genetic inherent DNA. But I do think year to year we can expect a crispier, harder Keon Pearson, and when he gets there, it really will be game over.
Yes, I think that's a very valid statement. I could definitely see him winning the Olympia for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. What about? Go ahead. What's that?
I think Keon is still in his early 20s or so.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
someone like Sean Clarita, also keep in mind, is 38 years old. You know, he's no spring chicken. So it takes some time to be able to get that degree of crisp, dense condition, hardness, and dryness that Sean Clarita is able to display, and Keon Pearson has yet to.
Yes. Yes. The Olympia is going to be a very interesting comparison between mass. Well, I hate to say it, but mass and class. Like the guys that are going to be bringing that freaky size, like maybe a Derek Lunsford or potentially an Ahmad Ashkanani. And then there's going to be people that are going to bring the conditioning. But it will be the big challenge to see who can combine both of them. And that will be your Mr. Olympia.
I agree.
Yeah.
But Josh, what would you say the big storylines were from the open class this weekend?
Yes. Yeah. What about the open class? So walk us through what happened at the Chicago in the open.
Yeah, well, you know, for me, when I think of the Chicago Pro Open and recap, you know, I'd say like the biggest storylines have got to be first and foremost, you know, Hunter Labrada grabbing his second pro win, you know, unbelievable rise and pro debut of Brett Wilkins. And then thirdly, the precipitous decline of, you know, an upper echelon competitor like Roelly Winklaar, you know, so those were the three headlines that really kind of grabbed me. But, you know, this was a show that I think we all were highly, highly anticipating, in that it finally had the combination of both star power and lineup depth that we've all been just starving for. You know, these shows up to this point have been characteristically soft in depth and soft in terms of overall star power. So I think we finally got what we were all craving. But I do not think it was the decisive result that we anticipated. I think we all thought it might be a decisive Roelly Winklaar victory. And we walked away with a very, very close 1-2 finish between Hunter Labrada and the rookie open class bodybuilder, Brett Wilkin.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people had, I even had Roelly in that 1 or 2. I was saying it was going to be a battle between Hunter Labrada and Roelly Winklaar for that 1 and 2. And then, I mean, outside of that, I can't recall, but it was very interesting how it lined up and how all of it changed. I had people like Mohamed Shaaban being in that 3 spot. He moved down to 5th, I believe. I think I had Phil Klahar probably around that 5th spot is where I wanted to see him. That didn't turn out at all. He got lost in the mix. Joe Maki, Justin Maki, those guys I had higher up. They were not there.
Yeah, I've got no shame in saying that some of my pre-show predictions were not exactly spot on either. But, you know, I do think the bodybuilding world and, you know, those who participate in bodybuilding media do deserve kind of a collective pass on the Roelly Winklaar whiff, if you will. I think all of us kind of wanted to give Roelly his due respect, you know, coming into, you know, what's typically kind of a tier 2 to tier 3 show. You know, I think we want to give him his due respect and kind of announcing him as the predetermined winner, you know, as you'd expect it to play out. But, you know, the facts were that Roelly simply did not bring that top 5 to top 3 Olympia level caliber physique that we were anticipating. You know, there's been a lot of speculation out there as to whether Roelly might have been dealing with some type of an injury or some undisclosed reason why he wasn't his best. But when I analyze everything out there, you know, Roelly's camp is typically pretty open with what's going on with him. You know, whether foreign muscle or the flu or travel issues or what have you. So I think Roelly's camp would have let us know if there was something really serious going on that ultimately caused him to come up short here. But I think what we ultimately witnessed was simply father time, you know, taking its course and having its hand in the process. And with Roelly being, you know, a couple of years removed from serious competition and, you know, 2020 being what it was, I think that time away from the stage, that time away from the competitive landscape of bodybuilding, and Roelly's, you know, advanced age being what it is, I think we saw the cumulative result of all that take course. You know, I think Roelly's, you know, getting close to 45, 46 years old. And when we were all introduced to Roelly the first time was probably back in 2012 with the Generation Iron film. So That was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Boy, time fly.
Yeah. And he's been competing that whole time. He's been placing top 5 at the Olympia, top 6 at the Olympia, placing very well at those Arnolds.
Yeah.
I want to push back a little bit because he's been at Oxygen the whole time, right? Ever since the last time we saw him, he's been at Oxygen.
Yeah, I think Roelly's been an Oxygen member since about 2016.
So it makes me like, in my brain, I'm thinking if you had 3 years off to train with some of the best equipment and the best supplementation, you'd think that he would have been making improvements. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he looked smaller and less conditioned. It seemed to me that his posing was kind of rough, where he was gassing out very quickly.
I would agree with you on some of those sentiments. Was he smaller? Absolutely. Was his condition a little bit off? It was. And was his posing as weird as it's ever been? Yes, it was. Mm-hmm. But I do want to come to Roelly's defense and say that I don't believe that he was situated in Kuwait with the Oxygen team for the entire last 3 years. I do think Roelly does a fair bit of international travel. You know, I believe he still has roots, you know, not only in Curacao, in the Caribbean, but as well as the Netherlands, you know, in the West Europe region. So I do think Roelly still travels around a fair bit and is probably not a, you know, sit in the basement and brood and just do bodybuilding 24/7 type, at least at this stage in his career. So while some of it is maybe understandable or excusable, I think it did wind up culminating in the result that we saw this weekend, which was a less than stellar Roelly Winklaar, you know. But I do think a lot of us in the bodybuilding world and the bodybuilding media land got a little bit ahead of ourselves and wanting Roelly Winklaar back at top form, because I think if we break down a lot of Roelly Winklaar appearances throughout the years, it's very rare that Roelly is spot on, nailing it in all fronts, you know, especially at some of the smaller shows. You know, even at some of the bigger shows like the Arnold Classic, you know, Roelly usually leaves something to be desired, whether it be his condition or his dryness. You know, Roelly's usually missing the mark more often than he's hitting the mark. And, you know, going against someone like Hunter Labrada, going against guys like Vulcan, you know, who's prepared like Matt Jansen, you know, those Matt Jansen boys leave no stone unturned. There was no way Roelly Winklaar is going to be able to come in here any less than his best and expect to be handed a gift.
Yep. And that's exactly what happened with a 5th place finish. A lot of people in the comment sections, I've read the comments, guys. I see them, but a lot of people are saying that that he's going to retire, and I just thought that, I don't know if it's just the naivety of some fans to like say something like that, because it's not like a Jose Raymond where Jose's in his 50s, right?
He's up there.
Yeah, so like that's when you're touching 50, yeah, that's a time to retire. But a guy that's taken a few years off is coming back into his first show and he misses the mark and still places in the top 5. I see potential, although he does look downsized. You can't really fix size that much from now to Tampa. But there's still a lot of opportunity for Roelly to do well, especially since I don't want to get on a soapbox, but he said he was going to do Tampa. He said he was going to do the Europa in Spain. I believe it's in Spain again. And then he's also going to do the Arnold Classic in Ohio. So he has a lot of opportunities to correct what happened at Chicago.
You know, I saw that announcement from Roelly, and, you know, I got to be honest, I didn't love it. The reason I didn't love it is because I would like Roelly to still try to embody that sense of confidence and bravado that you would expect from a top 3 to top 5 level Olympia placer, and that you don't want to hear somebody announcing that they're going to be doing 2-3 shows in front. You want him to say, we got it wrong last week. We're making the adjustments. See you at the Tampa Pro.
And we're going to win the Tampa. Just say that.
Roelly, I don't want to hear about San Antonio or Spain or what have you. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear a conviction in your voice or conviction in your message that you're bringing everything you got to the next show. You're going to get it right, and you're going to get back on that Olympia stage where you belong. Yeah. So But, unfortunately, to your point about fans asking Roelly to retire, should he retire? Absolutely not. That's still a very legitimate physique that can still hang with some of the best in the world. And, in certain shots, like his side chest where you saw that hamstring almost hanging to the freaking floor and that arm about to smack you in the face, the way he holds it and rotates it out. That's still stuff of legends. And he can still roll at the best of the best. But what works against him, similarly to what we saw in this past year's Olympia with someone like Phil Heath, is we fans and the bodybuilding judges alike, it's very difficult for us not to judge a competitor like that against their previous better forms. And so when I see a Roelly Winklaar like that, the first thing I think of is, a 2018 Arnold Classic Roelly, where he was just a little bit off the mark, but he was larger than life. And 6-7 months later, he dialed it in just a little bit more, and we saw the best Roelly Winklaar we've ever seen at the 2018 Olympia. So it's hard to push those versions of Roelly out of my mind when I see a less than version ultimately come up very, very short on a stage that is unfortunately not even comparable to the Arnold Classic or the Olympian. We're talking about the Chicago Pro, so again, like I said in the beginning of the show, quite a precipitous decline.
Yep. Yeah, it's not what we expected. It's not what we wanted to see at all. And like you said, it left a taste in our mouths. Was it not to be desired? Yeah. Who else? Who else was really surprising?
Maxx Charles. We got to give Maxx Charles his due.
Yes.
Because Charles did something that very, very, very few people are able to do in competitive bodybuilding. And that is bring your legs up as a seasoned, established professional. We almost guys do that. Typically when guys come into the pros with lagging legs, that problem tends to just typically exasperate itself. In that, guys are typically able to continue to put on upper body mass for a few more years into their pro careers, but the legs often kind of just are what they are. And, you think of guys like Juan Morel, whose balance just continued to get worse and worse as his pro career went on, rather than get better and better. So, I just want to say my hat's off to Maxx Charles for bringing up his legs, not only from the front, but also from behind. And, the degree of maturity that Max brought, especially from the front, you can make an extremely, extremely strong argument for Max taking that show outright if you were just judging the front shots. When you judge overall muscularity, when you judge his hardness, and when you judge the depth of his lines, because Max's lines from the front are much deeper, much crispier than Hunter's. They're similar to Brett's in that they're very, very nice, but there's a level of maturity that Maxx has that Hunter or that Brett has not yet reached. And so those points alone, when you just think about objective bodybuilding, which is, conditioned mass and lines, Maxx makes a very, very strong case for being in that first position spot, especially from the front and side. So just want to take a moment to, give my applause to Maxx Charles, my applause to Milos for what they were able to do. Because, coming into this one, I believe I had Max 5th, and I had mentioned that their camp had been pretty quiet. So, I was kind of just giving him like a veteran's nod with the 5th place. I didn't really want to place him any lower out of respect, but couldn't really place him any higher without seeing a whole lot of documented footage or photos coming in. But wow, Max brought it.
Yes, he did. And I'm hoping, I know that the fans are happy that you said that, because I think I probably commented to over 100 comments saying Max won that, or Max was robbed, Max was overlooked. And I don't think he was overlooked. I think that he just didn't have enough of what it needed, of the improvements that he made. It just wasn't enough to get the win. But you did say that it was debatable, at least from the front.
Very, very debatable. So yeah, my hat's off to Max. Let's get a little deeper into the show, into this lineup though, because we had a ton of depth and we had a ton of young talent. Really splashed the show. some of the names that come to mind, Zach Merkel. Thank you, Zach, for helping me at least nail one of my pre-show predictions. Zach came in here at 7th, and he totally lived up to everything I felt that, I highlighted with Zach, with the incredible structure, the really nice lines, just the great, fresh, young look, the healthy head of hair. Zach's going to be a star in our sport. When he came out and he hit his front relax shot, just structurally, that was one of the best guys that we saw on stage. Just his silk, maybe the closest thing that we're going to see to Dennis Wolf in some time. So
it's a good comparison.
Improve and get a little bit harder, especially from the rear, mostly from the waist up, as his glutes actually were freaking bonkers. If you look at the bicep, they were nuts. But if he can bring a little bit more harness and maturity to that upper back region and those lower lats, you can expect to see Zach work his way into that first call out next year. In fact, I want to guarantee it. Zach's going to be the first call out customer. He's going to be a tough one. We had Zach in that show. We had Justin Maki, Seth Shaw, Matt Kouba,
Joe Maki
as well. A lot of the new up-and-coming IFBB pros that have grabbed their pro cards within the last 3 to 4 years at some of the national qualifiers. So really, really good to see those guys in this lineup. I know a lot of them walked away disappointed that they didn't get a chance maybe to stand next to some of these top names that are flourishing in the sport. But, all of those names that I just mentioned, I think their time's coming here pretty soon, especially with what I think is going to be kind of the collective changing of the guard. I think we kind of saw it with Roelly, and, I think we're going to continue to see it with those guys from that, 2010 to 2020 era kind of falling out and making way for some of these fresh new faces. So all those guys that I mentioned, keep their heads up, stay hungry. I think big things are coming for all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked what I saw with Kouba. The conditioning is just, it seems to always be on point with that guy. What do you think it is with Matt Kouba's physique? Why didn't he get that nod at this show?
I'm actually a pretty big fan of Matt too. I know him casually. I'm always really, really impressed by what he brings to the stage, especially because if you follow Matt's preps historically, he's not somebody that shows the indications of exceptional shape and condition in his preps, but him and Chris Aceto somehow have a formula that's near magic. And almost every show he comes in, he's one of the most dialed in, nice, polished, conditioned competitors. And that degree of polish that he brings always stands out to me, especially in certain shots like his side relax, shots like that. He really, really makes a mark. But to your point, what I think really holds Matt Kouba back from making a bigger impact on the judges, especially early on in these shows where first impressions are everything, is unfortunately Matt Kouba is not very gifted structurally speaking. So if you look at him in poses like his front relax shot and his front double bicep, you will notice that unfortunately Matt has particularly narrow clavicles, which doesn't allow him to express a whole lot of width in some of those first impression shots that means so much when the judges see you at a first glance and try to decide where you belong in such a deep lineup. So certain physiques have, the tendency to kind of pick up ground on the competition as they move to the side and then turn around to the rear. And sometimes those physiques have to do a little bit more battling before they get the proper placement that they deserve. But it's usually the physiques that have the more inherently nicer structures and flows. Think someone like a Keon Pearson, or for the open class, if you will, a Zach Merkel, that are going to get the early nod with the right call outs and the right placements up front, because those structural qualities tend to catch the eye more than the crazy condition,
Okay. I was just wondering.
Yeah. So I don't really know if I have any strategy for Matt. Not that he would want to take anything from me. I think he's got a pretty good handle on everything they're doing. But, if anything, if he can just, in time find a way to add a little bit more width to his physique, whether it be through the lats, whether it be through the side deltoids, you know, whether it be, you know, maybe get a little thicker in the upper chest to just not look so, you know, slopey. If he can just get a little bit wider, I think he could be a force because he's a monster from the side. He's a monster from the rear. And I think his waist is actually really, really nice for a big guy. For, you know, I think he's like 5'10 or 5'11. Gets pretty heavy in the offseason, around 300 pounds. But he's got a nice waist, you know, so just needs a little more width up top.
Yeah. Okay. Justin Maki. So I love Justin Mackey's physique. We did an athlete spotlight on him probably about a year ago. What do you think Justin Maki needs to do to get into that top 5, that top 3 at some of these bigger shows?
So let me talk about some of the things I like about Justin. Justin's got some of the nicest lines in the sport. You know, really, really catches your eye with those lines that he has. He's one of the best posers, I think, in terms of just his mandatory presentation. You're not going to find Justin ever looking out of place in a mandatory shot. And he's also got a very, very nice, clean, fresh look, which I think is really, really, really important. And it should be highlighted in the sport of bodybuilding, you know. And it's no knock to the guys that, you know, don't have full heads of hair. I don't have one either. But, you know, I do think it's important to show a good, healthy, fresh perspective so that people don't think that this is like a one-size-fits-all kind of a sport. All of those nice qualities being said, I think the one thing that keeps Justin from really placing where he deserves to place is just the back shots, and specifically the back double bicep. You know, I think if you just pull up the back double bicep from that second call out, you know, he just gets completely wasted in that shot. No disrespect meant, but, you know, he's totally lost in it. You know, he's structurally not an especially wide guy, and he's always had trouble putting density onto his back. You know, when he was an amateur, Justin was always known for having a really nice structure and, you know, good lines and good presentation, but his back always left something to be desired. And I think we can still see that here now, and that we're not seeing a whole lot of 3D pop to this pose. We're not seeing a whole lot of really, really impressive sweep to the lats in this pose. So I just think top to bottom, this whole shot needs to come up, you know, another 7 to 10 pounds. And then I think he can really be in the mix. But until that happens, unfortunately to say, I think Justin can continue to expect placings kind of in that like 8 through 10 kind of range.
Yeah. In no disrespect to Justin, obviously, especially from like where I'm sitting in my competitive career, I would like to see a little bit more thickness, especially in the lower back. It just doesn't really feel like it's coming at you as much.
Yeah. And I truly say no disrespect, because for some guys, this is just one of those areas that it just might not be in their genetic cards to be able to develop to its fullest extent. And like what I mean by that is when you think of a competitor like, say, a Ben Pekulski, I want to bring him up just because we all know Ben Pekulski, you know, retired IFBB bodybuilder, to be one of the smartest, most adept bodybuilders, you know, we've ever seen in terms of his ability to train and his knowledge of the muscle and his knowledge of the function of the muscles. But Ben historically had one of the weakest backs that we had in open bodybuilding. So it's like, surely this guy knows how to train. Surely this guy knows how to supplement. Surely this eat, and, you know, he still doesn't have much of a back. And I would like to believe that, you know, unfortunately, it might be the same case for Justin Maki, because Justin gets trained by one of the best coaches in the sport in Phil Viz. Justin's a very, very dedicated bodybuilder who's, you know, he's not new to this thing. He's been around a little while. So, and Ben in particular, as you kind of look at those shots, it wasn't so much Ben's rear lat spread that held him back. It was his back double bicep. And it's kind of the same thing that Justin is running into. He's just got a back double bicep that just is not 3D enough for this pro level right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and he'll probably have a hard time finding a back double bicep on Ben Pekulski Pekulski's page because, you know, it's no secret that pro bodybuilders aren't the biggest fans of putting up their weakest poses. So
Yeah.
you're going to see front shots of Ben because, you know, he had quads, crazy delts.
Yeah.
But kind of my thoughts on Justin Maki. But, you know, I literally thought he and Phil Viz did 100% of everything they could have coming into the show. I don't think he could have even looked like 1% better considering what he had to work with. I think he nailed it, and he just got lost in what was the deepest and best lineup to date of the 2021 IFBB Pro Calendar.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair breakdown for him. I love his physique, so it was a bummer to see him not place as highly, but it makes sense once you break it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Hassan Mustafa.
Hassan. You know, Hassan he's showing some very, very interesting characteristics and attributes here as we get deeper and deeper into this IFBB Pro season. I want to say that this looked like the biggest Hassan Mustafa we've seen all year, which honestly makes no sense to me when I think about the way bodybuilding works. You know, usually when you show like 5 or 6 of the year, you know, most people would expect that at that point you're going to be about as, you know, flat as you've probably been all season. Your upper body's probably going to start dissipating a bit. You know, your stronger body parts are still going to look strong, but some of your weaker body parts are going to start to deflate. And for a lot of guys, condition tends to get worse as opposed to get better. And, you know, I think once again with Hassan, we saw more or less the same thing with this condition. You know, I think we still saw him struggle to show the glutes and the hamstrings that we're all after. But man, I want to say that from the front, particularly in the quads, the delts, the arms, the pecs, this was like the biggest Hassan Mustafa I've ever seen. So they said, you know what, starving him's not working. Let's just feed him. And maybe he just got super big and full from a week of food. I don't know what it was, but they still haven't found the formula. And because this show was much deeper than any other show we've seen this year, you know, Hassan fell from that, you know, roughly 3rd through 4th spot that he's been landing in and to that 6th place spot.
Yeah. I like, how do I word this? I like Hassan's physique. I love that he's been able to put on this much mass as a younger competitor. I just wonder what it's going to take for him and his camp to just figure it out. Is it just the hamstrings and glutes? Is it maybe some, when I look at it, I look at the midsection. I just think it's just a little too big. It's just, I don't know. I just kind of get lost in the critiques instead of just appreciating it.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right about some of those critiques as well. You know, bodybuilding is a first impression dominant sport. And, you know, with Hassan's waist being what it is, it's going to be hard for him to really make that positive impression that he wants to make early on in the show when the judges kind of anticipate he's not going to be hard enough from the back and he's not bringing the tight, pretty waist of some of these higher placing guys like Hunter, like Brett, like Max. So, you know, Hassan's got his work cut out for him. But the good news is that Hassan has all the muscle he and then some.
Yes.
So that being said, I think Hassan, with the right strategy and the right people around him, you know, really has a good outlook for, let's say, the 2022 season. You know, if they can get their mind off of the tissue and try to come up with some type of strategy to make sure the condition is where it needs to be, you know, that's really not a bad outlook because a lot of guys that are IFBB pros still have to put on anywhere from 10 to 20, 25 pounds before they can reach their peak potential. You know, even someone like Brett Wilkin, you know, the consensus is coming out of that show, as amazing as he looked, he's not going to get the placings that he wants until he puts on another 8 to 10 pounds. So, you know, if Hassan can just find a way to get it dialed in with the right people around him, he can have a hell of a 2022 campaign.
Yes. Yeah. Perfectly said, Ty. He has the muscle. He has the frame. He just needs to bring that conditioning in and improve on some of those areas, like maybe the midsection. But it will be interesting to see.
So after Hunter Labrada grabbed his second pro win this weekend, What chances are of placing in this year's 2021 Olympia?
Hunter?
Yeah.
I'd like to see him in that first call out. Let's run through the first call out. Who's probably going to be there? Brandon,
okay. Brandon, Rami, Hadi. I'm still going to give William Bonac his due credit, and I actually think we might even be in store for a better version than what we saw in 2020. So we've got 4 names right there.
Nathan Diash isn't qualified yet.
No.
Roelly isn't qualified. Ian could be creeping in on that 6th spot.
Yeah.
Hunter could be squeaking in on that 6th spot.
So where I was kind of headed with my thoughts is I'm just incredibly excited to see where Hunter Labrada places amongst the crowd of Akeem Williams, who we were just about to mention is also going to be in the fight for that top call out. Ian Valier, Nick Walker, and then Sergio Oliva Jr., who not qualified, but dark horse candidate for the Arnold, and hopefully in here. I'm especially excited to see how that all shakes out with those guys, because that is a hot, great group of upcoming new talent fighting for that next up, first call out.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I hate saying it because I say it so often, but seeing how Akeem is going to compare. And then also, I mean, Nick Walker is a complete freak factor. Like, I would hate to put him outside that top 6, but he's got to beat out people like Akeem Williams.
Right. When I think of just the overall freak factor, the density, the sheer amount of size and condition that guys like Nick Walker, guys like Akeem bring, I am actually forced to position them ahead of, let's say, someone like a Hunter Labrada coming into this year's Olympia. When I think about who's currently holding the crown, which is Big Rami, and what he was able to bring last year, I think Nick Walker and Akeem actually compare very favorably. Mass monsters with great condition in their own right. So I'm incredibly excited for what could be a mass monster riddled Olympia first call here, just to mix things up. We've seen a lot of nice, shapely guys on the stage last few years. That would be a hell of a mix-up, wouldn't it?
I'm gonna have to message Fernando or Bison Tries and see if they want to do a side-by-side between someone like Brandon Curry and Nick Walker, because if they're going to go for the mass with great conditioning, I feel like Brandon's going to get lost in that mix, which is crazy to say for a previous Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, and who's he's actually at risk of getting lost next to? I'm really looking forward to seeing this year's version of Akeem Williams stand next to Brandon, because I honestly think they have very similar physiques, very similar strengths, and very similar weaknesses. I think that'll just be a tremendous, tremendous matchup. Where I see that one breaking down to and separating the two is, from the front, Akeem's got the huge edge over Brandon with the wheels.
But
then around, and Brandon has a huge edge in the upper part of the back, if you will. And got the nicer sweeping lats, and he's actually able to dial in the middle of his back in a way that Akeem historically has not been able to. So it'll be really interesting to see where the judges go with that, because the other thing the judges also do not have to contend with this year is giving Brandon his Olympia due. They can really just place him where he deserves without having to give him a token second place, to not disrespect the champ too much and, have him drop too far out of the placings. But it's wide open this year for Akeem. So I think a great comparison. Gosh, I know we're getting too deep into the Olympia now. I'm getting too excited. Rami and Hadi, I can't wait to see that comparison. I see Nick Walker and Hunter, their comparison. I think they've got a very interesting kind of parallel journey that they're both running, and that they're both up and comers. They've grabbed pro wins very early. Both of them have great teams and a lot of positivity behind them in their collective circles.
Yeah.
So, I think they have a very similar campaign running right now, but two entirely different physiques. So total apples and oranges. And I think that's just great for the sport,
Right.
The Olympia is said and done, and we see who places where. I think there'll still be a lot of debate about like who's better. Is it Nick? Is it Hunter? And I think that's what's great for the sport, and that's how the sport thrives. When we're in the and we've got people debating, who's really better. That's when the sport's high.
Yes. Yeah. It feels like it's a wide open Olympia, but you have to remember, like, Rami's had all year to bring a better, improved package than what he brought last year. So
Right.
it is a little silly to say that, but I will be very interested to see how this Olympia shows up. Shoot, I'm excited just to stand next to these pros and just see how I look. Because like I'm 6'3", so like, am I going to look tiny next to these guys, or like, am I going to be like weird looking because I'm tall but not as big?
Dude, I know it's been a long time since I've seen you in person, but I don't remember you being that tall. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why do I remember you being 6'3"?
I stand wide. I probably when I was next to you, I think I stand wide. I try to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, no, crazy, but it's always fun. It's always breathtaking getting a chance to stand next to the pros. I've got a lot of experience around a lot of these guys. Not like I run around in their circles. I've been a bodybuilding fan for a while, so I've seen a lot of these guys guest pose and come into big shows and expos and stuff. But I Steve Kuklo, Dallas McCarver, rest in peace, Nick Walker, Dexter Jackson, Sean Roden. Hell, I can't believe I didn't remember this, but there was a pro show 2 years running here in Kansas City. I don't know if you remember the Muscle Mayhem Classic. So, I got a chance to see like Victor Martinez, Charles Griffin, Akeem Williams. Man, that was a hell of an experience, but it's something else standing next to these guys, man. It'll make you want to pretty much sprint into the gym and not show your face to the world again for another 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Just hide away in some locker room and blast like 500 MIGs a test. Just be like,
a little
humble. Yeah, it's weird because like I'm probably one of the bigger guys at my gym besides like the guys that are that's obviously enhanced. So
man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can literally look down on them. They're wide as a house, but I can see over them.
Yeah. No, but seriously, man, I haven't even given you enough of your proper due, dude. Your shots are really starting to come together. Really impressed with some of the lat taper I'm seeing in your front lat spread and your front double bicep. Your legs are filling out too. You really did your work with the squats this off season. Your squats were nice and clean, and you put on for it. Dude, I think you can be a heck of a bodybuilder, man.
I hope so. I've been surprised
with your natural taper that you've already developed, that you actually carry a pretty good taper, even at honestly fairly high body fat levels. So excited to see what you look like when you come down, because a lot of guys when they're in the middle of the off season look like rectangles, and you still show a pretty nice inverted triangle, which is great for your classic physique aspirations.
Yeah, I was very impressed with how much muscle I was able to put on this off season, even around a couple of different injuries. So once we diet all this off and we get on stage in November, I'm going to be very excited to see how I compare against other NPC level competitors.
Hell yeah, man.
So I'm very excited. I'm excited for this YouTube competition to get done with me and Marx Max Muscle, so I can start eating carbs again and do a proper contest prep.
Do you guys have an actual finish end date to this contest?
August 1st, I'll be sending in my YouTube submission of my mandatories to the Superset Man, and then he's going to do a review or a competition on his channel comparing our two physiques. That's awesome, man. So, that's awesome. Can't wait. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of fun. So I love both of you guys, man. You guys are both my boys, man. Yeah, I love Mark. He's I'm trying to get him on the show. It's just I've noticed like with him and Daniel over at Bodybuilders Without Borders, like they just don't want to be in the camera, and it's just it's kind of weird. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it, but
I wouldn't be surprised about Daniel never coming on, but I bet you if I nudge Mark a little bit, maybe we could go three-way and get a little group podcasting on. I bet you he'd do it.
I think he would. I'd like to just introduce the audience to him and get everyone to know the journalists a little bit more than just, us sitting here talking to the mic. So
did I ever tell you the story, or did Mark ever tell you the story of like how him and I are tight? Yeah, so it's really interesting, man. It was like, I want to say it was about a year ago. And, like I've always been like a true avid fan of like these comparison videos. You hear a lot of like pros and amateurs like make fun of the idea or talk about it like it's lame. But, we function in a sport that has almost no day-to-day excitement. And unlike any other like big time sport, we have like the least amount of competitions or exhibitions per year. Football plays once a week. Pro basketball plays like 3 to 4 times a week. Pro baseball plays like 3 to 4 times a week. Hockey, 2 to 3 times a week. These sports have storylines that generate naturally all on their own. They don't need any of this like sensationalized like media hype to add to it. We have nothing going on in our sport, and nobody ever competes against anybody. Everyone's just trying to book their ticket to the Olympia, get there with as few stage trips as possible. And it's nothing like the 90s when all of the best in the sport got on stage like every other weekend. So, us fans, like we need something to sink our teeth into, in between these like 9 to 10 week gaps of shows. So, in my opinion, shame on some of these, up and coming bodybuilders in the sphere for, trying to bring negativity to guys like Maxx Muscle and Fernando Arroyo for simply just trying to bring some excitement and buzz to a sport that typically has very little to none.
Yeah.
So anyways, when I first discovered Mark's channel last year, I was a pretty avid fan, but, I'm a stickler for people in the bodybuilding media industry doing their homework and getting their facts right and getting their names right and things like that. And I don't remember what the video was, but for whatever reason, it was just a day where like Mark was, he had a few errors and maybe I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and I sent him a DM, like I didn't like publicly berate him or anything. I just told him like in a DM, like, hey man, like, if you're going to come out here, understand that like bodybuilding fans have like a high level of regard for, the history of the sport and people's competitive past. So like make sure you get people's names and, their contest history right before you put these videos out, because, it's important to just be a good journalist and just do your due diligence. And surprisingly, Mark received that message extremely well. He didn't take any offense to it at all. He received it like a man. And, I admit I was a bit embarrassed for the way I came at him. I probably could have come at him a little softer and more friendly.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
But he took it in stride, and he took it as a challenge to be better and to raise his game. And like ever since then, we've had like a really like awesome, genuine friendship.
Good.
Yeah,
I can't remember where I bumped into him. I think he found me. He commented and he's like, wow, love the content. And then I saw his stuff and I was like, oh, comparison videos. That's kind of interesting. So then I started messing around with that. And then he featured me on the channel a couple times. I gained like 100 subscribers. I was like, blew my mind. And then ever since then, like I like watching his stuff. I like commenting. He's not as active on Instagram, which I wish he was, but
no, I know it's unfortunate that he's not, because like I want to like be able to share more of his stuff or like connect the
he's
dots.
Such an interesting person. Like,
yeah, like I love his wrestling history. Like I've actually watched like a lot of his old wrestling matches, because like I'm a huge like former wrestling fan myself. Yeah, he really is an interesting dude. Like I wish guys like that would, bridge the gap between their platforms better, which, obviously I'm trying to get you to do the same thing, because, if you can get everything to grow in motion, that's how you take off. You can't have anything lagging behind though, because like anything, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So, we need to be ironclad, on Instagram, just like we're going to be on YouTube.
Yes. Okay. So I think we did a pretty good breakdown. I guess the only person I I like Phil Kulhar. I think his time is coming for him not to get overlooked. Seth Shaw was just a little stringy.
That was like I talked to you about, like some guys that are tall have such great balance that their height actually works with them. Other guys, their balance is such that it works against him. And Zach Merkel to Seth Shaw was a great example of that taking place, where it's like in some areas, like Seth Shaw has tons of muscle, like, you know, in his side chest, he looked big as a house. But then in some of his like front shots, he looked very shy on muscle, you know, where Zach, you know, because his balance is such, you know, he never really looked like shy on muscle in any particular shots. You know, you could nitpick in some areas and say, like, you know, this little part or that little part could be a little bit bigger, but it didn't look like he needed the wholesale 10 to 15 pounds that someone like Seth Shaw still looks like they need.
Okay. Yeah. Last one, Mohamed Shaaban. We like the new muscle. It just needs to get a few more years to get conditioned.
Yeah, exactly. You know, no secret with that. Kind of similar to what we were talking about with Keone. Slightly different case in that I think we saw a bit of tired muscle with Mo Shaaban as well. But yeah, you know, just a combination of tired muscle from doing a lot of shows this year, you know, being deep in a prep for a better part of the year, combined with, you know, just a lot of brand new muscle that, while structured nice and inserted nice and, you know, nice lines on it, it just needs that time, maturity, and crispy detail. So I don't really expect much more out of Mohamed Shaaban this year, even though I think he's still going to stay on the competition train. I think you can kind of expect more of the same. Unfortunately, probably even worse placings as these shows get a little bit deeper and deeper here. Yep. But, you know, I think we can expect him to come out shooting in 2022. And you can count him amongst, you know, some of these young guns that, you know, have a very, very good, solid, established future in the sport. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, in a couple of years when the maturity catches up to the freaky size and the good shape, you know, that he's in the conversation with guys like, you know, like Hunter and Nick, you know, who I don't necessarily, in my mind, aren't maybe Olympia winning caliber physiques, but physiques that'll be, you know, up there in that, you know, 3 through 6 spot for the next few years, I think, you know. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Mohamed Shaaban slowly work his way into those ranks.
Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't argue with that. Let's wrap this one up because I know we're using a new recording platform, so I can't see how long this one's been, but I know it's been a long one. That'll do it, I guess, for another episode on the Bodybuilding News Network. Myself and Ty, we did a wrap-up of the 2021 Chicago Pro in the Open in 212 specifically. Look forward to a prediction video coming out very soon for the, I'm going to butcher it every time I say it, the Puerto Vallarta 212 Pro Show in bikini.
That about it. I wasn't doing that, man.
Yeah, it's up. So I did a little research. They announced it in December of 2020. So it's not a new it's a new show, but it's not, you know, it's not like they snuck it under the rug. It still kind of feels like it though, because no one's talked about it. But
yeah, we'll see. Man.
Yeah, it'll be I guess it'll be interesting to see who shows up. There's a couple favorites coming out of there, but that's for another video. And then also we have a couple other videos coming out pretty soon here this week, so stay tuned for that as well. Ty, did you want to plug anything at the end?
Yeah, of course. You know, everybody, you know, make sure you check out Phase One Nutrition. You know, they've been backing me for 2 years, one of the best up and coming sports nutrition companies in the game, based out of Columbia, Missouri. Got to support homegrown USA based companies, especially nowadays. And also want to plug the Flavor Gang. These are the best sauces in the industry. Give me just 1 second here. There we go. All right, you guys, there's the Flavor Gang. A whole line of prep and diet friendly sauces, spices, and hot cereals. So make sure you head over to the Flavor Gang on Instagram, Gaines Bakery on Instagram, and use code Ty Jordan to save on all of your Flavor Gang products.
Yes. Perfect. I know I'm going to put my order in. You talked about the free shipping. When was that?
That's right. Flavor Gang offers free shipping at the end of the month. So be on the lookout on the Instagram page, Flavor Gang Official. Also be on the lookout on IFBB Pro Ross Flanagan's page. I believe his handle is Ross Flanagan Gains. And Ross will definitely keep you up to speed on all promotions, discounts, and anything you want to know about the brand. Yes, this is a brand that you've seen affiliated with Nick Walker, Alyssa Kessling, the classical queen. These are the sauces that are taking the bodybuilding industry by storm. Yes, they're the same ones that you've seen on Fuad's podcast. You guys got to try this stuff.
Okay, I will soon. So don't you guys worry about that. And then also this channel is not officially sponsored. If you are a brand and you want to try a trial sponsorship for a month or 3 months, just hit us up in the DMs on Instagram at Bodybuilding News Network. We'd love to hear from you. But that'll do it, guys. We appreciate you stopping in and watching the whole video. Let us know in the comment sections below what you loved about this episode, if you learned anything, if it was informative, and if there's something that we can fix or how we can improve this show. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Saunch and Ty Jordan, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Thanks so much, you guys. See you later.